The indictment against P. Diddy was released the other day, so I'm going to read the entire thing for you guys. It gets crazy with talks about Puff Daddy's freak-offs, where he would bring a bunch of people over to do you-know-what, and police confiscated thousands of bottles of baby oil and lube from his residences. It goes into how he used his employees to cover up his crimes, and much, much more. So strap in, let's just jump right into it. Count 1. Racketeering conspiracy. The grand jury charges. Overview. For decades, Sean Combs, also known as Puff Daddy, also known as P. Diddy, also known as Diddy, also known as PD, also known as Love, the defendant, threatened and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees, resources, and influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Sean Combs, the defendant, operated his business headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and Combs Global, collectively the Combs Business. Corporate entities in the Combs Business included, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. At all times relevant in this indictment, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse toward women and other individuals. This abuse was, at times, verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. At times, Combs and others acting at his direction made arrangements for women and commercial sex workers to fly to Combs' location. Combs ensured participation from the women by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence. Physical abuse by Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, the defendant, was recurrent and widely known. On numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009 and continuing years, Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. These assaults were, at times, witnessed by others, and included one instance at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016, which was captured on video and later publicly reported, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave. When a member of the hotel security staff intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. Combs' violence was also not limited to these women. It extended to his employees, witnesses to his and others. Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, the defendant, used the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. Those employees, including security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors and other close associates, acted as Combs intermediaries, and their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. The Combs Enterprise. From at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, the defendant, and others known and unknown, were members and associates of a criminal organization, the Combs Enterprise or the Enterprise. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of coercion and enticement to engage in narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The Combs Enterprise, including its leadership, its members, and its associates, constituted an enterprise as defined by Title 18, United States Code Section 1961-4, that is, a group of individuals associated in fact, although not a legal entity. The Combs Enterprise consisted of Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, entities within the Combs business, including but not limited to Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Combs Enterprises and Combs Global, individuals employed by and associated with the Combs business, and others known and unknown. The Combs Enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for common purpose of achieving the objectives of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in, and its activities affected, interstate and foreign commerce. The Combs Enterprise operated in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. At all times relevant in this indictment, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, was the leader of the Combs Enterprise. Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, and others known and unknown, participated in unlawful and other activities related to the conduct of the Combs Enterprise's affairs. These individuals included certain Combs business employees, such as members of Combs security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, as well as other close associates of Combs. Purposes of the Combs Enterprise. The purposes of the Combs Enterprise included the following: operating a global business in the media, entertainment, and lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcohol spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry, enriching members and associates of the enterprise, including its leader Combs, and in particular those who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes, preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of the Combs Enterprise, including the power of its leader Combs through violence, use of firearms, threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, and physical and sexual abuse. Fulfilling the personal desires of Combs, particularly those related to Combs' gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers. Enabling Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual violence, trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in narcotics distribution, and other crimes, and concealing the commission of such acts. Securing absolute loyalty from the members of the Combs Enterprise, including through acts of violence, and protecting the Combs Enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from detection and prosecution by law enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against individuals who witnessed the crimes committed by members and associates of the enterprise. Means and methods of the enterprise. Among the means and methods by which Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise conducted and participated in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs Enterprise included the following. Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs's role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended acts with male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as, among other things, quote, freak-offs, end quote. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced performances that Combs arranged, directed, during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs Enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial workers across the state lines and internationally. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including high-rank supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated the freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms for the freak-offs, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, and lighting, cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try to mitigate room damage, arranging the travel for victims, commercial workers, and Combs to and from the freak-offs, resupplying Combs with requested supplies, delivering large sums of cash to Combs to pay the commercial workers, and scheduling the delivery of IV fluids. In or about March 2024, during the searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse to cause the victims to engage in freak-offs. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Combs also threatened his victims' careers and livelihoods, including if they resisted participating in freak-offs. Victims believed they could not refuse Combs' demands without risking their financial or job security, or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional. Combs also used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victims. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs' security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims of and witnesses to his. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, as well as a drum magazine. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise enabled Combs' control over his victims by following his directions regarding financial payments to victims, advancing or suppressing the victims' career opportunities, and acquiring the controlled substances Combs used to keep the victims compliant. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise at times witnessed Combs' violence towards the victims or the victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening. Instead, members and associates of the Combs enterprise helped conceal the violence and by, among other things, assisting Combs in monitoring and preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotels or Combs residences. These occasions included instances in which a victim was required to remain in hiding, sometimes for several days at a time, to recover from injuries Combs inflicted, without being publicly observed. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise also assisted Combs in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee his. When employees, witnesses to his, or others threatened Combs' authority or reputation, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise engaged in acts of violence, threats of financial and reputational harm, and verbal abuse. These acts of violence included kidnapping and arson. In addition, on multiple occasions, Combs threw both objects and people, as well as hit, dragged, choked, and shoved others. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negative publicity or legal or law enforcement action against him, including in or about late 2023 following public allegations of Combs' crimes, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they experienced or knew to law enforcement. On phone calls, Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with a false narrative of events in an effort to conceal Combs' crimes. Combs caused these calls to be recorded in at least 2 occasions. The Racketeering Conspiracy. From at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment, in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, and others known and unknown, being persons employed by and associated with the Combs enterprise, described in paragraphs 6 through 12 of this indictment, an enterprise engaged in and the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States, to wit, Title 18 United States Code, Section 1962C, that is, to conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity, as the term is defined in Title 18 United States Code, Sections 1961-1 and 1961-5. Consisting of multiple acts involving kidnapping, chargeable under the following provisions of state law: California Penal Code 207 kidnapping, 21A664 attempt, 31 aiding and abetting, and 182 conspiracy. Multiple acts involving arson, chargeable under the following provisions of state law: California Penal Code 451 arson, and a repeat of the 3 laws from before. Multiple acts involving bribery, chargeable under the following provisions of state law: California Penal Code 137A, bribery of a witness, and the 3 laws stated before. And then it lists off some acts here. It says multiple acts indictable under Title 18 United States Code, Section 1512 relating to tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant, Sections 1589 and 2 relating to forced labor, Sections 1591 and 2 relating to trafficking, and Sections 2421 and 2422 and 2 relating to transportation and inducements to travel for purposes of prostitution and other illegal activities, and multiple offenses involving the possession with intent to distribute or distribution of narcotics and controlled substances, including cocaine, oxycodone, alprazolam, methylene-dioxymethamphetamine, bromodimethoxyphenethylamine, gamma-hydroxybutyric acid, and ketamine, in violation of Title 21, Sections 841A1, B1, C, B1E, B2, and 846. Distribution and possession with intent to distribute, and conspiracy to do the same, and aiding, abetting, and willfully causing. It was part of the conspiracy that Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, agreed that a conspirator would commit at least 2 acts of racketeering activity in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise. Notice of special sentencing factor. From at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, as part of his agreement to conduct and participate in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, agreed to, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, obtain, advertise, maintain, patronize, and solicit by any means a person, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion, as described in Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1591E2, and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial act in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1591A1 and B1. Count 2. Trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Victim 1. The grand jury further charges, from at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion as described in Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1591E2, and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial Act, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same. To wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained a person, victim 1, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim 1 to engage in commercial acts, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim 1 was engaging in commercial acts as a result of force, fraud, and coercion. Count 3. Transportation to engage in. The grand jury farther charges from at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2024 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, the defendant, knowingly transported an individual in interstate and foreign commerce with the intent that the individual engage in and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same. To wit, Combs transported, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in. Then there is the forfeiture allegations, which are up on screen if you want to read them. It's essentially just saying he has to give up everything that he may have made or earned through these violations. And then here is a substitute assets provision section. And so obviously, of course, this is insane. And as an update, Sean Diddy has pleaded not guilty to the trafficking charges, and the judge denied him bail, so he will be held. And that's all the updates that I have right now for you guys. Thanks for listening.